Beijing is feeling the pain caused by U.S. sanctions on semiconductor sales to China. But chips aren't the only things Beijing worries about. The regime is quietly preparing for more economic sanctions or even decoupling. China's own experts have identified a few sectors in which China's dependence on foreign suppliers would disrupt domestic industries. In addition to semiconductor and industrial software, there are at least 4 bottleneck areas that will paralyze China's industrial activities in the event of sanctions by the West. Hello everyone, welcome to Leisrealtalk. I'm Lei. In my April 6 video, I discussed how dependent China is on the West for industrial software, which is one of the 5 areas the Chinese have identified in addition to semiconductors. Today we'll discuss the other 4 areas. China makes a lot of things and exports them to the world, like cell phones, computers, home appliances, and other consumer goods and gadgets. This allows Beijing to enjoy a large trade surplus with countries like the United States. However, the materials, tools, and components China uses in making those products often come from the United States, Europe, and Japan. Chip capacitors and resistors are important basic components for consumer electronics, such as cell phones, computers, home appliances, and automobiles. A smartphone uses hundreds of multi-layer chip capacitors, or MLCCs, to maintain a stable current in the circuit. The latest iPhones use about 1,000 MLCCs. Electric cars use more capacitors and resistors and have a higher quality requirement than home electronics due to the weather and motion conditions of vehicles. The Chinese electronic manufacturing industry consumes trillions of resistors and capacitors a year, but China is able to make only low-end products, while the best consumer-grade capacitors and resistors come from Japan. An MLCC is smaller than a grain of rice and is a ceramic block laminated with hundreds of layers of ceramic and hundreds of layers of metal. 2 electrodes are sandwiched by a layer of insulation, which is used to store electrical charge. And the thinner the layer, the higher the capacitance. Japan makes 1,000-layer MLCCs. The Chinese can only make 300-layer ones. The MLCCs are mass-produced and sold in rolls for a few dozen dollars. Although they are cheap, they have high requirements for quality control. No more than 1 in a million is allowed to be substandard. If just one of the hundreds of capacitors in a smartphone is faulty, the phone will malfunction. Japanese manufacturers can make tens of billions of MLCCs with consistent quality, but the Chinese lag far behind in quality control. Among the world's top 10 MLCC manufacturers, half are Japanese. Japan's Murata Manufacturing is the absolute leader in this industry. Its new capacitor is 1/5 of the size of its counterparts, but has 10 times the power storage capacity. With a complete product lineup, Murata has about a quarter of the world's market. South Korea's Samsung is second, with a market share of about 20%. Taiwan's Yageo Corporation is the 3rd largest, with a 13% market share. Yageo is also the world's largest manufacturer of chip resistors, with a 34% market share. Mainland China's Fenghua High-Tech has a market share of roughly 3%. Computer numerical control tools are precision manufacturing tools equipped with an automated control system that can be programmed. These tools are widely used in producing components from hard materials like metal and are indispensable in aerospace, shipping, automotive, railroad construction, and defense, among other industries. China manufactures low-end CNC tools and relies on imports from Japan and Germany for high-end machinery. Chinese media says Chinese CNC machine tool manufacturers fall behind the world's top players by at least 40 to 60 years. This means that the tools the Chinese make are at the technological level of the 1960s and 1970s. China has been the world's largest importer of CNC machine tools since 2003, and 90% of its high-end tools are imported. A third of China's imports come from Japan. the world's largest exporter of CNC machine tools since 1978. Germany's Siemens began to get involved in CNC systems since the 1960s. At present, German and Japanese companies jointly make up 80% of the high-end CNC machine tool market. Although the United States is the inventor of this technology, Americans don't produce enough for exports. Gas turbines are also called combustion turbines. The Chinese call heavy-duty gas turbines the crown of manufacturing because of their complexity. The ability to develop and manufacture them often represents the level of a country's technological accomplishment in heavy industry. Gas turbines are divided into grades or classes such as E, F, G, and H. The higher the class, the more thermal efficiency they offer. GE's H-class turbine, for example, has the highest efficiency at 62%. GE also has the world's largest gas turbine engine at 600 megawatt. It cost GE more than $1 billion to develop. China has been trying to develop efficient, larger gas turbines to empower its aircraft carriers, destroyers, and other large ships, as well as to improve the efficiency of its power plants. China's Dongfang Electric has produced 300 megawatt turbines with 80% domestic parts and 20% imported parts. And the 20% imports are the core components that China cannot produce. In 2019, China successfully developed a smaller capacity, 50 megawatt F-class turbine with all domestic parts. There are only 4 manufacturers in the world that can produce the highest level of H or J-class gas turbines. They are the American company GE, which has roughly half the market share, followed by Germany's Siemens, Japan's Mitsubishi Hitachi, and Switzerland's Ansaldo. The last category that the Chinese fall behind the West is in industrial materials. At the end of 2022, the Ministry of Industry and Information Technology surveyed more than 30 large Chinese enterprises and found that 52% of the 130 key industrial materials that China uses depend on imports. This includes bearing steel, LED falsifier, adhesives, and materials for making things like aircraft tires, electric sensors, and the small steel balls at the tip of a pen. Yes, you heard that right. China cannot make the small steel balls for pens and must spend a lot of money to import them. Manufacturing these metal balls have very high precision requirements. The diameter is 0.3 millimeter and the surface roughness is only 0.4 microns. If the gap between the steel ball and the nib is too small, ink will not flow. If the gap is too large, it will lead to ink leakage. Even Chinese cannot believe that the mighty country their leader believes will soon overtake the United States cannot make the tiny steel balls of ballpoint pens. Here's the video on China's inability to develop industrial software. Last but not least, companies outside China that own technology in these areas should take precautions against industrial espionage activities. Please like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.